ready for you guys. Oh, and look at that. Look at her floating around there.
Yep, she is definitely interesting. Should I just fire off a whole bunch of things?
Yeah, Pon, you've got the floor.
Okay, let's go.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, wow.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, the house.
Oh my goodness. So there is definitely a lot going on. So let's go ahead and start things off with the passive. We couldn't have Baba Yaga without her creeping cabin. So what's going on with the passive, guys?
Yeah, so her passive is, of course, her cabin, her hut. It's the thing she lives in. It has the chicken feet. You can see there it's kind of like roosting and getting ready to kind of go into the ground. And we wanted to let this be a persistent thing on the battlefield that kind of followed her around, like kind of creeps along the battlefield. You can see as I move away, it's going to start kind of moving towards me. Oop, yep, it's up.
It's got so much personality in a living house. You know, he's like pops up and is like, "Oh, don't leave me."
And the goal of this is basically as it's running around the map, it's accumulating essence for Baba Yaga. So it's not just kind of idling around. You can see on the passive meter that purple bar there. If I were to get hurt, so real quick, hit me with. Normally I don't actually get to talk while typing all this stuff. You get to hear all the click clacks.
We're filming this from home because we're still doing that, and thank you everyone for bearing with us as we try some new things.
So you can see as I take damage, that energy kind of drains, and I get some health back, which is part of the passive. So it's basically like a mini fountain for Baba Yaga herself. But it's not just a fountain, so you can see
it's a home away from home, would you say, Pon?
Yes, it's definitely that. You can see as it's running around, it's getting a little bit more energy, but it has an extra component there that might change how you build Baba Yaga. So I'm going to quickly back. Let's go buy, I don't know, maybe a Warlock Staff. That seems like that'd be good.
That seems fitting to her.
Yeah.
At least thematically.
So I'm going to approach the cabin. It should be running towards me. Yep, there it is. And let's see what the energy does here. And I have
stacks.
Oh my gosh.
6.
So the energy is first trying to accumulate into stacking items. So if you have a stacking item, if you have a Warlock Staff, if you have a Hide of the Urchin, if you have a Karen's Coin, this will actually convert that energy into stacks of that item. The amount of energy it takes scales off the stack count, so you can't just get 10 stacks of Hide of the Urchin for free.
Right, the tougher ones.
Yeah, so you can see I'm getting pretty good stacks of Warlock Staff, but it would take nearly a full energy bar to get a stack of Karen's Coin, for example. Paran's Coin.
Right.
Yep. And so if you don't have any stacking items or you're hurt, it'll actually use a heal instead. So you can use this in multiple different ways.
Okay, so Baba Yaga is a mage, by the way.
Yes.
And her passive is the Creeping Cabin, which has this really unique pet type of mechanics where you can't really control exactly where it runs. It also gets startled by enemies, right?
Yeah, so I can actually run it to these Odin bots.
And if you get near it when it's charged up, it'll try to give you item stacks, or if you don't have item stacks, it'll try to heal you. Does it do anything else?
So you can see when it gets near this Odin real quick, right? That little tether of purple energy. This is actually giving the cabin more and more energy. So if enemies are around it for too long, you can see I'm getting a lot more Warlock Staff stacks because enemies are nearby because it's draining essence from them. They're getting a small power reduction for this.
Okay, so they get a little debuff and you gain stacks. But yeah, being near 2 gods for this long is pretty uncommon in gameplay.
Yeah,
but
because
you're getting a lot of stacks here, but...
If you get too close, the cabin is...
Oh, there it goes. Oh, no.
Yeah, it didn't like that I spawned something on top of it.
Yeah, I was a little confused with the spawn. But...
If an enemy gets too close, it's just going to run away. So enemies have ways of, if this is getting in people's ways, or if they're draining essence and they want to get rid of it, they can just run to it and the cabin gets startled and runs.
Awesome. So we're going to go through her abilities next. You can see them across the bottom. Those are some temp icons. You'll see a few other temp assets in here. We're working from home. Things are all coming together greatly, but a few things are going to be streaming in throughout PTS. So, let's see ability 1. It looks very interesting.
So, first ability is Rad Witchcraft. You can see that this targeter is different than maybe when I used it before. It's a kind of like a right L shape, and it has some kind of frosty effects. When I fire this, the projectile is going to travel that path. And you can see my passive meter is now changed to kind of a purple L with an X, and this is actually a silence field. So projectile has a path and it has a field it leaves behind, and they're both rolled randomly every single time you cast this ability. So we got right L silence.
Getting a lot of L's.
Yep, right L protection.
Just like my weekend.
There you go. Now we have a different
Yeah,
shape.
it's a circle.
So now we have a circle that is a slow field. Yeah, oval.
Right, so this is one of the most unique random effects in all of Smite. And as you mentioned on the intro, kind of Baba's personality, we kind of interpreted as chaotic, and that's where we translated that into these chaotic spells.
Yep. And you can see that there's a slow field and a silence field, which debuff your enemies. But there's also these protection and movement speed fields that if we can get them to roll. See, here's a protection field. When I stand inside of it, as an ally, I get bonus protections for being inside this, and it persists for a little bit after I leave. In this one, I'm going to actually move a bit faster right in this field. So
Nice.
sometimes you roll helpful effects to help your teammates, and sometimes you roll harmful effects to hurt your enemies. And playing around that and playing around with the different shapes and different hit areas. Like, for example, like normally, like, this is about 55 range, you wouldn't be able to hit this Odin. If you aim it to the right, and you mess around with that shape a little bit, you get some extra range. And so learning these shapes is going to be a very interesting part of
I
it.
gotta say, in playtesting, that is like one of the most fun things to do with her. You're like aiming off to the side, and the opponent's like, "Oh, okay, no problem," and then it just takes a right turn at you. You gotta always be on your toes, and I love how Baba always knows what she's gonna cast next. So she can always be prepared. But as an enemy, you never really know what she's gonna be throwing at you.
Definitely playing into the randomness and the chaotic nature of Baba Yaga. It's super cool. And speaking of randomness, let's go ahead and move into Baba's next ability, Baba's Brew.
Yep. So Baba's Brew lets her actually use her mortar and pestle to craft a potion. And the ingredients that she throws in the potion are random. So you can see when I hit the button, I kind of brew this potion. And this one is, let's see, 2 Eyes of Newt, 2 Dragon Scales, and 1 Wolf Tooth, which is basically each ingredient's going to empower this potion in a different way. So you can see when I throw that potion, it goes out, explodes, and it's going to deal damage. For each red ingredient, or Eye of Newt, it's going to increase the damage of it a little bit. For each Scale of Dragon, it's going to add a slow to it. And this slow will stack in intensity per ingredient. And for each green ingredient, or Wolf Tooth, you actually get a power reduction and attack speed slow applied to your enemies that are hit by this. So when I throw this one, it's a normal potion damage. It's been amplified a little bit by a red ingredient, and this is going to heavily slow that Odin. I believe
that's
it's
crazy.
that's what 12.5%. So that was a 50% slow applied to that Odin. When he was hit. So you can see I brew these potions and I get these different ingredients, and when I play around with these different ingredients, I'm going to apply different debuffs or deal more damage based off what I get. But that's not all. You can be like, hey, this potion is pretty good. I might want to save it for later. I don't really have a use for it right now. You right click or you cancel it or you refire the ability, and now it's in your consumable slot. And you can see here this is a temp icon.
Yes,
But-
okay.
So again, we're working from home. We're trying to get all this in for PTS so you guys can play with it. Temp icon for now, but you can see I have this potion in my consumable slot. If I use it, it pops right back out, and I can use it again.
That is so cool. So she can pocket it and save it for later.
Correct.
Which actually lets her, you can only pocket 1 potion at a time now, but then you can, essentially in the future, you can pocket 1, and then wait until your cooldown is up, and then throw the one from your pocket, and throw the one you brewed back to back, which is a pretty strong power play.
Yep, and you can see I have a potion out right now, and I also have a potion in my consumable slot. I can swap between them at will, so I can just bring out the one that suits the situation, and then I can throw one out, pop another one, throw it out. So there's a lot of flexibility in this move.
A lot of learning and a lot of practice. Like when you learn to not just quick throw, when you get one of those super slow potions and save that for when you're in trouble, or when you get one of those super damage ones and save that for when you really need it, that is how you go from a good Baba player to a great Baba player.
So you can see, Cabin, hello.
He got his paths around a little randomly, which is also intentional too, right?
Yes, he has some random pathing, because when you walk around the map, it's going to follow you, so it might give some information to your opponents. It has some random elements there, and you can see it kind of triggered there, so that you don't always know where the cabin is kind of going and what direction it's heading towards. You can see, so you can see now I have another potion I can cast. I brew one. I'm going to use the other one that I had stored. I'm going to throw that one, and bring this one out, throw that one. So that's how this ability functions. You get a whole bunch of random ingredients. if you find a potion that you think you're going to need for later, so let's say you get a 5 damage potion, like, no, I have to save this for the team fight, right? You can pocket that one and save it for that team fight when it occurs.
Definitely.
Man, I just have the biggest smile on my face already.
For sure, yeah. I'm loving this recurring theme of like the randomness. Baba Yaga always knows what's about to happen, but her enemies might not necessarily know. That's super cool.
Well, they can see her holding the potion, right? So you can get an idea for what type of potion she's got. If you see a whole bunch of red or a whole bunch of blue, you might know what to play around it.
Yeah, and as it's traveling towards, you can see that the colors that are swirling around it are indicative of the ingredients that are inside of it.
Yeah, the projectile itself, that looks really good.
Yeah,
and also the potion color changes, so you can see here, the potion itself right now is blue, and when I throw it, it's going to have a blue bit of explosion in it, to signify that was a majority blue potion or majority red potion. So there's some definitely other tells that exist.
So there's like, what, 4 potion colors, right? One majority for each color, and then there's the split one.
Yep. And so this one was a blue. I'm going to throw this one. See if I can brew a neutral one. So here's the neutral one, which has no majority ingredient.
The 2-2-1.
So you can see, 2-2-1. It has most colors in here, and when I throw it, it has a bit of a more kind of colorful emissive.
Okay, nice.
Crazy. Well, this kit is really taking us into the stratosphere already, but we gotta blast off even further, right, Pon?
Let's do
Good
it.
segue. So the third ability is Blast Off. Baba Yaga goes into her mortar for protection. So let's say you're in the middle of a team fight and you're about to get krakened. You can jump into the mortar for protection, and then while you're inside, Baba Yaga builds up magic that explodes, sending her flying off in a direction, or damaging people that are nearby, right?
Yeah, this ability is so fun to use as kind of a risky damage ability where you kind of dive in with the warm-up and then turn and burst yourself out.
It's so wacky.
It's a really unique movement ability. It gives her strong protective stats while she's inside of her mortar, but she still can be interrupted, right, Pon, by stuns, silences, cripples.
Yes, she has knockback protection, which is the only protection she has. So, yeah, so if I get stunned here, if I get crippled, or if I get silenced, it's going to end the effect. And
put it on cooldown.
Correct, and put on cooldown. So there's counterplay to this ability. Baba Yaga has to be careful with how she's using this ability to make sure that she's not stunned out in a bad spot.
Right, the other day I was playtesting Baba and I got ganked by a Kali, and I tried to quick blast off, and Kali just stunned me out of it, and I was like, uh-oh, bad timing. So you really have to be a little careful when you're going to fire this and be very aware of your matchups when you're playing Baba.
Yep, really cool stuff going on. This ability also feels really good because you get a little bit of a movement speed boost when you first enter it because you're jumping into the mortar, and that helps you like maybe close the distance to get in range for damage or juke a little bit. So there's a lot of like small subtle things on this ability to help it feel really good to use as well.
It just fits her tone and her theme really well too, because you know we've talked a little bit of creepy and a little bit of wacky. This ability is just straight fun, which I love to see.
For sure. And speaking of tone and her character as a whole, like I said earlier, you can't have Baba Yaga without her home sweet home. So let's talk about the ultimate.
Yep, so this is where we finally get to bring the cabin more directly into the fight. Baba Yaga calls down her cabin. It crashes down on her, knocking opponents away if they're too close. So we'll show that off first real quick. So I call it down. I'm flying back a little bit. And now I'm inside the cabin, and Baba Yaga is in this cabin brewing up some witchfire magic. And this witchfire magic, when thrown, explodes on the target area that it hits, as well as it leaves a fire patch on the ground that creeps after enemies. So you can see here, I'm in here, I get 4 shots of this witchfire, and if I throw it, lands, explodes, and it also chases opponents down.
Oh, that's awesome.
So not only when it first fires is it going to deal some pretty impressive damage, but if you get people stuck in it, if they're CC'd, or if they just can't get away, they're going to take continual burning damage from this effect.
Now Baba is fully attackable and vulnerable while she's in the cabin. She just gets a little bit of a health shield there.
Correct. She gets a small health shield to indicate the cabin's providing her some extra protection, but she's CC immune, but she can be entirely damaged. She can be killed in this state. So she has to be a little bit careful when she's playing with this ability, because if she just jumps into the enemy team and they burn her down, she can definitely be killed.
And you can see a little bit of the cabin jumping around a little on outro. We're definitely aware of that, still working toward it for PTS, but this ability is a really cool mage ultimate. It lets you put out a lot of damage, but if your opponents are really aware of it, see it coming, they can avoid it pretty easily, but if you flank a fight and throw this into a pile of enemies and they are not paying attention, and they end up letting those stacks, those different Witchfire deployables pile up on them, they start taking damage from all of them individually all at once. You can put out an absurd amount of damage really quickly if you place this and time this correctly.
Yeah, I think we worked out the damage to be something around, like, Anubis, if you were to be hit by every single one and stand in it for every single tick, you can take some serious damage. Of course, enemies will have movement ability to get out of it, and there's a long time, right? Like, the amount of time in between each shot is relatively significant. I can't just spam fire it super fast. So it's unlikely that you're going to get all the damage out, but in the middle of a giant team fight where there's 5 people you could potentially hitting, you're putting out a lot of damage in that fight.
And just shout out to the animation team. You can actually see Baba with like some kind of cartoony proportions, like reaching out of the windows and chimney and stuff to throw these fireballs out the front door. It is like, it's so fun. And we got a little bit of this, a feel for this ability in that amazing cinematic trailer we made before we started the Baba segment, right? How awesome was that?
Yeah, that cinematic was so cool.
Yeah,
we were watching like little pieces of it come in over time, and I was like,